Hello again, everyone. This is Chris Scher, and that's Robert Harding on my right. And this is the Citizen Sports Weekly for Thursday, March 10th, 2016.
Sure is.
It's March Madness here in the Syracuse area because people are mad because it looks like Syracuse is not going to be in the NCAA tournament. Although, the men's team.
That's right.
Let's briefly give some major props to the Syracuse women's basketball team. They finished in second place at the ACC tournament. They lost to Notre Dame in the championship game, which is pretty darn good because Notre Dame, I believe, is the number 2 or number 3 team in the country.
Yeah, number 2.
Yeah. So the SU women are going to the NCAA tournament, and I was saying to Robert earlier this week, I think they could be as high as a number 3 seed.
Yeah, I think they'll get a high seed, and it looks like this year they'll be the team to watch in the tournament because it's going to be a tough run. You got teams like UConn in there, but Syracuse, Sweet 16, Elite 8.
Yeah. Who knows?
Final Four?
Nah, it's going to be tough. Final Four, it could. I mean, look, it could happen.
Depends on the draw.
That's what I mean. If you're in the same bracket with UConn, you're not going to the Final Four, I'm sorry. Although there would be a little bit of poetic justice to see Brianna Stewart
that regional final
have
game.
to beat Syracuse to get to the Final Four. I mean,
the team that
she, we'll see. Yeah. But we're going to talk about the men, though, because yesterday, on Wednesday, Syracuse just, again, consistently inconsistent. And I can't spell that, by the way. Inside joke. They got off to a good start, and then Pitt came back, and then Syracuse, realistically, you got to give them major props because they could have just rolled over and that was the end of it. But they came back, and they got back in the game, and they had a chance to win it, and then the end of the game was just, I don't know what happened at the end of the, actually, I do know what happened at the end of the game, but it's just inexplainable that it happened like that.
Yeah, I mean, this team, I don't know, they, like you said, I mean, they've been inconsistent, and, the things that we're hearing, after this game, because, of course, the next step is Selection Sunday, to decide their fate, and, the narrative now is that, well, Boeheim was suspended, those games shouldn't count.
No, they count.
Toward their resume, and I just don't see how they can't. No. The team's the same. The coaching was different for some games there, but the players were the same. And these players, and we've talked about it before. Benajay, he has great games. He has terrible games. Cooney, good games, bad games. Malachi Richardson, he'll show up and then he won't show up. Same thing with Roberson and Tyler Lydon, and so. This team, there's good talent there, but they just couldn't put it all together. And we were saying before, they win, they beat Florida State, they win a game in the tournament, they're set. They didn't do either of those things. So now they're on the outside looking in, I think, and NIT.
Oh, absolutely, if they want it. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, they'll be an NIT team. I mean, again, I think one of the most important things to remember for the NCAA is that when the selection committee looks at a team's record, they look at their last 5 or 10 games. And Syracuse has not played well in their last 5 to 10 games. I believe they're 1-5 over their last 6. And, if they go 5-1, they're in. There's no even debate. Even if they split them, I think they're in. Realistically, I think all they had to do was really win 2 or 3 of those 6 games, and they were in. You can't lose to Florida State. You couldn't lose to Pitt. I mean, that was the one that was killer because that's a game that realistically, if they play better the whole game, and let's not take anything away from Pitt. Pitt played a great game too. But if they play better, they win that game, and we're not even having this conversation. They're most likely they're in. Matter of fact, if they win, they're basically finishing up against North Carolina right now. So, a whole different situation here. So, they're going to be in the NIT. If they're not, if they're in the NCAAs, then I think there's going to be a lot of people upset on Selection Sunday. But they're not going to make it. So, it's too bad, but as the old saying goes, you have nobody to blame but yourself because, you play the games, you have that control over things. You can't lose to St. John's, and you just can't lose 5 out of your last 6 and expect to go to the big dance. So,
yeah, you gotta seal the deal. You gotta, again, you gotta beat teams like Florida State. You go back earlier in the year, and you mentioned St. John's. You gotta win games like that.
You can't lose to St. John's.
And you look at these games in February and March. Well, all the games mean something, especially when you're trying to put together a resume, and they just didn't get the job done this year.
Nope. So Our next topic is the one that's dominating sports media, national sports media.
Huge.
And of course, what else will we be talking about in March but NFL free agency? Because every month you could talk about the NFL. Think about it. Last month was the Super Bowl.
That's right.
This month is free agency.
Yep.
Next month is the draft.
Right.
May, do we
What
finally get a break in May?
There's something in May, I'm sure.
OTAs?
Something like that. Sure.
So, all right. So, we'll kind of touch a little bit about the league itself, but obviously Robert's the Bills fan, I'm the Dolphins fan, so I think it'd be remiss if we didn't discuss our own teams. The Dolphins, Olivier Vernon, gone. Lamar Miller, gone. Rashard Matthews, gone. Okay. Mario Williams, in. Yeah, interesting. They signed a safety out of Detroit whose name I could not pronounce. If you put a gun to my head, and I apologize for that I cannot pronounce this person's name. But
who'd they sign? Where's he from?
Detroit, the Lions.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pronounce it.
Yes, yeah, it's just, I'm sorry, folks. But, look, if they had signed Olivier Vernon last year during the offseason, none of this would have happened. And Olivier Vernon is not a $17 million a year player. That's what he got from the Giants, okay? He's not. But I think he's a $12 million a year player, maybe even a $13 million a year player. The Dolphins easily could have gotten those numbers together. But, again, Mike Tannenbaum, not the sharpest GM in the NFL, he's not the GM. He's the executive vice president of football operations. But he's the GM, folks. He's calling the shots. So let's not think anything different. So C.J. Anderson's in the Dolphins building right now. Supposedly they're going to give him an offer sheet. That wouldn't be a bad replacement for Lamar Miller. Although Jay Ajayi, who showed a lot last year as the Dolphins' second-string running back, has had knee concerns. I don't think you want this guy getting a full workload. I don't think his body can handle it. So you definitely want to bring in another running back. Offensive line still needs to be looked at. That's something that I think the Dolphins are probably going to use the draft to address. And, of course, Kiko Alonso and Cedric Maxwell's the old basketball player. Byron Maxwell, oh, my God, flashbacks there, are coming in for the Dolphins trading down from number 8 to number 13 with the Eagles there. A lot has been made about this trade. I'll be honest with you, I'm not crazy about it. You're trading for two guys that have been injured, have had spotty histories, and you're trading down in a draft where with the number 8 pick, I think you could have gotten an impact player on defense, cornerback, linebacker. Now you're trading down. I don't like that. Maybe they'll try to trade up, but I'm just not a fan of this trade. Robert knows Kiko Alonso a lot better than me, but to me it's like he had one very good year, and then he got hurt, and he hasn't been the same since. So, I think a lot of guys can have one very good year. Being consistent for 2 or 3 years is something different. A lot of Dolphin fans compare him to Zach Thomas. I don't know how you can do that. I think it's just from 1 year you just can't do it. So I'm not a fan.
When healthy, he can be good, but he was injured for part of his rookie year. His rookie year ended because of injury. And then last year with the Eagles, he got on the field, but he was banged up for most of the season. So, that's when you start building, 2 seasons in the NFL, you've been hurt for both of them. Mm-hmm. Start building a reputation on it.
So Mario Williams, the Bills fan here is probably laughing at that because he knows that Mario did not play with his whole heart last season. And, as a Dolphin fan, I like to think he's not going to pull those shenanigans again. But, obviously this guy has issues with, being a good teammate. I think it's safe to say that. And you're adding them with Ndamukong Suh, who was the same type of player. And as a Dolphin fan, it kind of concerns me. Now, Cameron Wake is supposed to be back, which kind of makes me a little less anxious because I think maybe he could have a chat with these gentlemen and say, look, guys, we're all going to play as a team here. We're not going to be a bunch of individuals, So we'll see what happens. But as for the Dolphins, I'm not thrilled right now. But if you're a Dolphins fan, you have to remember we do have the draft coming up. There's still a long way to go. This team isn't finished yet, so let's not overreact. So, Robert, now about the Bills and their free agency moves so far.
Well, they really haven't brought anyone in. Their big issue being salary cap, of course. So, you've seen some guys go. Leotis McKelvin, for example, former first-round pick, signed with the Eagles. Ron Brooks, another member of the secondary who was a free agent. He's heading to Philadelphia.
Chris Hogan.
Chris Hogan is visiting with the Patriots. May sign an offer sheet with the Patriots. Objectively, I think that would be a great pickup for the Patriots. Hogan is a good slot guy.
I liked him when he was with the Dolphins in that training camp.
And New England certainly could use the help at wide receiver. And then of course Mario Williams being released from the Bills, signing with Miami. You're welcome.
Addition by subtraction.
You can take that guy.
Yeah. It'd be funny if he has a good year, though, isn't it?
Well,
we'll see, though.
We know he's easy to block.
Okay.
The big deal, I think, wasn't even anyone coming in. It was re-signing Richie Incognito, who helped shore up the left side of the line. They're going to have Cordy Glenn for at least one more year. They gave him the franchise tag. Now you've got Incognito signed for the next 3 years. So your left side's good. You got a good center in Eric Wood. The right side, you have coming into his second year, John Miller. You have some questions at right tackle. Who's going to play there? So that might be a place where they have to address through the draft or later in free agency. There could be a second or third tier guy that you bring in that gets the job done. There's plenty of those guys out there. On defense, there's some question marks. Obviously with Williams leaving, how do you fill that void at defensive end? You have Jerry Hughes on one side. Obviously you got two big guys with Kyle Williams and Marcel Darius in the middle. But what do you get on the outside to complement Jerry Hughes? And that could be a priority in the draft. They might not look at that right now in free agency. There's plenty of guys in the draft, fortunately, so that could be an option. And they need linebackers. Nigel Bradham, I heard, was talking to Philadelphia. I don't know if he signed or not, but that would be a decent loss for the Bills. He's a solid linebacker. So, and then the secondary is okay, but you need depth, of course, and they've lost two guys this week, so that might be another area in the draft. But overall, I think the Bills are they have some salary cap issues to deal with because they've spent a lot of money on defensive linemen. Yep. So they have to kind of manage those. But re-signing Incognito, that was huge for them.
And one thing I did mention about the Dolphins, they cut Brent Grimes and his wife Miko. And she's pretty vocal on social media, but I'm not going to go any further than that. But, that's a guy that, he did not play up to expectations last year, but he did make 3 Pro Bowls, but I don't think the Pro Bowl really means anything, to be honest with you. So the Dolphins still have their work cut out for them in the defensive backfield. So now let's talk a little about the league in general. We'll just touch on this real quick because we've kind of dominated with our own teams. But I think Houston really has made – I think they've won free agency so far after only a couple days. Getting Lamar Miller at running back and Brock Osweiler at quarterback, I think the Texans look like the best team in the AFC South right now. And that's something. So we'll see what happens with that. Giants obviously spent a lot of money on Olivier Vernon to shore up their defense. The Jets got Chris Ivory. Not Chris Ivory. Matt Forte. Chris Ivory left. So, I think there's a lot of moving parts here. It's still early to say what teams really helped themselves, what teams have been hurt. We still got a long ways to go with that and, of course, the draft. So we'll see. But right now, preliminary, I think Houston has done the best so far in free agency.
Yeah, I think the team that's made the biggest statement, and I'll elaborate on that in a moment, is the Philadelphia Eagles, because what they've basically done is said, okay, the Chip Kelly era is over.
We're moving on.
They have clean house. You look at Alonso and Maxwell, two guys that the Eagles brought in last year. Chip Kelly brought those guys in. Eagles were like, nope, we're done. We don't need these pieces, and they've parted with some others too. So it's going to be interesting to see the Eagles this year because they have some good players there. We'll see how this goes with kind of going back in time almost to kind of the old front office. Obviously bringing in a new coach, but we'll see how that works out. Now that they have kind of hit the restart button. But I think a good note to end on is the biggest news this week was Peyton Manning.
Yeah, he retired.
Walking away. We saw this coming, but any Peyton memories you'd like to share?
Well, I have a couple actually.
Oh,
okay. First one, his first start his first NFL game was against the Dolphins, September 6, 1998. It was a Sunday. It was the week I got married, actually. That was the day of my bachelor.
12 years old.
That was the day of my bachelor party. And we went golfing that morning, and then we went to my parents' house to watch football. My buddies were playing cards. I don't play cards, but I was watching the Dolphins and Colts, and that was his first game. And he played halfway decent. And then the second memory is a year later. It always ties with Marino. But in 1999, October of 1999, the Colts were playing the Dolphins, and I was in Hawaii. And the game started at 7 o'clock in the morning, local time in Honolulu. And I watched that game at the All-Star Sports Cafe. That was the Andre Agassi, Wayne Gretzky, sports bar, Hard Rock Cafe thing. And that game had an amazing finish. Marino completed a long pass to Rondé Gadsden on a 4th and long, and Dolphins won the game late and everything. That was just such a thrilling game to watch in that atmosphere. So, the Manning did his job against the Dolphins. There were some games where I remember one game. I think the Colts only had the ball for like maybe 20 minutes, but every time they had the ball, they scored and they ended up winning against the Dolphins. That was like in the late 2000s, I think. So, he had a great career. He's got 2 rings. He's a Hall of Famer, no doubt about it. He's one of the best ever. I think he's in the top 5. And, you tip your hat to him. It's like, okay, let's move on. And Tom Brady, please, if you want to retire too, I have no issue with that either.
Yeah, for me, a couple Manning memories. The game that he led that comeback late against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think it was on Monday Night Football, is probably one of the most memorable games in Monday Night history, just because of the circumstances. The Colts were, they were toast, everybody thought. Shut off the TV, go to bed. And I actually stopped watching, and then I saw, just flipping through, I saw that, the Colts had closed the gap, and I'm like, oh, I got to watch this. A phenomenal ending. Just that kind of, performance by Peyton, never give up, just fight through. The other thing, my wife is a huge Peyton Manning fan.
You know what's weird? A lot of women are Peyton Manning fans. My best friend's wife, who I don't think really cares much about the NFL, is a huge Peyton Manning fan. And another friend of mine's, it's his ex-wife now, but is a huge Peyton Manning fan. It's amazing that women just love this guy. Yeah.
My wife's a huge fan, and as long as I've known her, she's a Bills fan, but she's a Peyton fan. Like, that's her favorite player. And he's just fun to watch. And when he went to the Broncos, we were in a sporting goods store, and I found a Peyton jersey. Now, she had wanted a Peyton jersey, but she wanted a Colts Peyton jersey. So I found a Colts Peyton jersey. It's on clearance at that point. He's no longer with the team. So bought her a Colts Peyton jersey. It's still in the closet. She still wears it from time to time, to root on Peyton. So that's kind of. I'm sure we're going to go to the Hall of Fame.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
I'm sure.
I was just thinking like, you're probably going to go to Canada in 5 years, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
You and everybody. That's one of those. You better. Good luck with that, man.
Yeah. For me, there was this debate, and it kind of happened with Marino and Montana. When they got out, who's the best, and for me, for us now, it's Manning and Brady, and to me, just the way Manning was such a general. I'm not saying he's better than Brady, but just that's what set him apart for me is that he seemed to be in control of the game. And it seemed to impact everything, and it was just so much fun to watch. It's gonna be weird watching NFL games this year, not hearing Omaha or anything else.
I can live without that. So no, I'm just kidding. Thanks, Peyton. Thanks for the memories. So, all right, folks, we're gonna wrap it up. This is another edition of Citizen Sports Weekly. Next week, I'm sure we'll be talking about NCAA basketball.
Yes.
As we break down the brackets a little bit, maybe we'll do our picks.
Yeah.
So we'll maybe do that one on Wednesday, just a little bit early. All right, folks, hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next week.